Give us some tales from the trenches.
Yeah.
What happened?
I always say that this was like the best, worst first job anyone ever could have had. And it really kind of set the bar super low for me for what poor set conditions are. And so in a way it was great because then anything I came back and did here, it was like, we're fine, guys.
It's only going
Stop
up from
complaining.
here.
Yeah. I mean, the story ends with, and then Russia invaded.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a Her Story of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. I've seen their software. It's beautiful. If you're producing film and television, you should call them and tell them I sent you. And as a bonus, they are committed to including and promoting women, and I could not be happier that they are a sponsor of this podcast. For this episode, I sat down with Megan Woeppel. She started out as a cinematographer and then transitioned to being a showrunner and a writer. She is currently the showrunner on Gears Pro Circuit All Access, and she is working on her feature film called Nightmare Mansion that is filming in Kansas City. She has some great tales from the trenches, which she shared here. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. In fact, if you're trying to listen to it on a podcast platform and it's not there, let me know so I can make sure that it is there. And if you haven't already, check out our other two podcasts, The Kiss My Age Show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything and all the things that matter, hosted by Lasta Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. And if you fall into that category, please join the Facebook group and join in the conversation. And Exit 38. It's a show where Emily Van Dyne and Sean Patrick Hughes, who seem to be opposites from a political perspective, discuss the issues of the day while trying to find common ground. All right, here's my conversation with Megan Woeppel. Have a listen. What do you do?
So I am the showrunner on a show called Gears Pro Circuit All Access. And that is a docu-series about professional video game players who play the game Gears of War.
Now, this is something I know nothing about. So you were just telling me there are people who do this, like play the video game professionally and do tournaments and win money?
Yes, it has become a whole thing. And when I came onto the show a year ago, I knew nothing about this world. So it's been a huge learning process for me. But esports is quickly becoming as large as traditional sports.
Like a real thing.
Like a real thing. Esports is joining the Olympics in 2022.
Seriously?
Seriously. And there are now college esports scholarship programs that work just like athletic scholarships. And then in the major esports game titles, there are organizations that sponsor players and teams and pay them salaries and for them to practice and provide
to get
them
really good at a video game.
Yes, and a lot of them will provide them housing even, and personal chefs and personal trainers, and it's this whole ethos of like not just staying in your basement playing video games. They're starting to treat the gamers more like athletes.
And they're training?
And they're training.
Like, are they training their bodies?
Yes. Like
Does that make you a better video game player?
Well, the whole idea is you can't sit at a computer 8 hours a day and just play a game and function at your top. Like, you have to be healthy, mind, body, soul, all of that. And so the organizations that sponsor the players are starting to see that and buy into that. And like we've seen over the last couple of years, the players are getting a lot healthier physically. And then it's also narrowing the gap in skill in the gameplay.
Because they are getting better.
Yes. And then, so the players get their salary and, whatever other benefits depending on the organization. And then they also go to the tournaments and win money.
This is bananas to me. And you know what I'm thinking? There must be a lot of money in video games.
It depends on the game. But yes, like Fortnite right now is basically printing money. The company behind Fortnite, Epic Games, is making so much money they don't know what to do with it right now.
This is what my kid is playing all day.
Yes.
With all his
and
friends.
all the dances and talking to each other and
Yeah, because I keep saying, don't you want to go see your friends and have a play date? And he's like, I play with my friends all day long.
exactly.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is a whole new world.
Okay, so you weren't a gamer before you did this.
No.
You're a show people.
Yeah, I have tried a little bit to play video games since I got this job, and you put a controller in my hands and I am not functional.
Yeah, I can't do it either. I try.
I can move, I can aim, or I can shoot, but I cannot do more than one at the same time.
I mostly wanted to slow down so I can see where I am and what I'm doing,
Yes.
and then I'm dead by the time I've
Yes.
oriented myself.
Yes.
It's crazy. Let's go back to the beginning.
Yes.
How did you get into this business in the first place? And by that I mean entertainment, not necessarily video games.
Right. So I grew up in Kansas, and I actually grew up in the music business. My parents owned some music stores, and so creativity was always a big thing in our house, mostly geared towards music. But I started writing very young, and so
Writing music or writing?
writing stories.
Oh.
And then I made my first little short film type of thing when I was like 9.
Oh, really?
And my dad is like such a tech guy. He's got to have like all of the toys.
Did he have like the latest gear and
He had
camera?
the latest gear. And so like at that time I was doing like tape to tape editing on like the old school dual deck machine
God.
through the TV. And so then I made, in 6th grade, we took a big trip to California, and I made this whole documentary about my time here because my school wanted me to write a journal, and I was like, journals are boring. I'm gonna
make a movie.
And my dad had this Indiana Jones hat, and I put it on and created this alter ego of Indiana Joanna. And everywhere we went in California, I was like, this is Indiana Joanna reporting live from wherever. And then I would show everything that I was learning. I came back and edited it together and turned it into my teacher. And my teacher loved it so much, they showed the whole 6th grade.
Oh,
and
my
then
God.
that went over so well, they ended up showing the whole school. And so I was hooked. I was like,
Yeah, you were a filmmaker.
any school project that I could turn into a film from that point on, I did.
What kind of camera were you using?
I mean, this was back in like the high 8 days.
Yeah.
And like just whatever prosumer stuff my dad had was what I used. Yes.
I have a high 8 cassette right in my hand right now.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to go take it to the conversion place today to see what's on it.
That's amazing.
I found it in my garage.
That's amazing. I haven't seen one of those in a while.
I know, me neither. I didn't even know what to call it. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
So I got into high school, and it was time to start thinking about college and careers and all of that, and I didn't really consider film as like a viable option because I was just this kid from Kansas and didn't know anyone in the industry. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to music, like family business, easy choice.
Because you play a bunch of instruments too,
I play
don't
a
you?
bunch of instruments.
What do you play?
My main four would be
Main four.
piano, trumpet, French horn, and guitar. But I play pretty much any band or orchestra instrument that you can think of. Because again, I grew up in a music store. My first job was repairing music instruments. I started when I was like in elementary school.
So that you saw as a career, like that's a legit thing you can do and earn money, but film was like still like going to the moon.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I went to college for music, and
Where'd you go?
I went to a really small school in Kansas City called Mid-American Nazarene University. And I got started, and my classes were really fun, but I was really bored, so I added another major, and I was really interested in theology at the time, so I was like, I'm going to double major in music and theology. I don't really know what I'm doing, but
I'm going to
it's
run
fun.
music at a church.
Yeah, sure. And I studied that for a year, and it was really fascinating and really interesting, and I loved all my classes. But I didn't know what I was gonna like do with it afterwards, because I hate performing. Like, I hate being in front of people. I do not like you can't pay me enough to be on camera.
Oh my God, how funny.
I am very much a behind the scenes person. So I was like, and I didn't want to really like teach music as my full-time career.
But you can do all these creative things.
Yes.
Quietly, privately.
Right.
In your bedroom.
Yes. So the summer after my first year of college, I was home with my parents and we were watching a movie, and I was just like bloviating about the use of color in this movie and what they were trying to communicate through their use of color in this movie.
Now, at this point, had you taken a class, or that's
No.
just what you were seeing?
Yeah, like I hadn't taken any film classes. I had just been like.
Did someone say, get her to film school?
That was when my parents were like, "Why are you not in film school?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, who does that?
That's a thing?
Like, who does that, you know? And they were like, you might think about it. So I started researching, and at that point I was basically like a year away from graduation. I had so many credits going into high school, or going into college, and then I took so many hours while I was in college because I get bored easily.
You wanted to start over?
Right, I didn't want to start over, and I didn't want to spend 3 years learning history and theory, and then make one thesis film my senior year, and that just didn't seem like a practical path forward.
Yeah, a good use of your time.
Right, exactly. I was like, I'm not going to start over. So I found the Los Angeles Film School, which at the time when I ended up going was a 1-year super intensive study program.
In LA?
In LA. So I dropped out of college and I lived with my parents for a year and worked 2 jobs to save some money.
Oh, you didn't even finish where
No,
you were?
No, I didn't finish. I was like, I'm not going to use this. I don't need more debt.
I'm done.
I'm out. And a month after my 21st birthday, I moved out here by myself, knowing no one, and jumped into film school and worked really hard that first year, and then I was off and running.
Oh my God. So you just moved here, got an apartment, enrolled in school, did it.
Yeah.
And it was a 1-year program.
It was a 1-year program at the time, and it was exactly what I was looking for at the time. The program has changed dramatically since I left, so I have no opinions on it now. But at the
This
time,
is not an endorsement of
no,
LA Film School.
Exactly.
Okay.
But at the time, I was like, okay, I want to be a cinematographer, and I took a camera home my first day of class. We were in class like 12 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus some Saturdays, making multiple short films a week outside of class time. Like that first 8 weeks, I think I was sleeping like 2 hours a week. Or 2 hours a night. It was insane. It was boot camp.
And you were so happy.
And I was in seventh heaven.
Yeah.
And that whole year, I spent time every day in the cinematography lab, just practicing shooting scenes and lighting and learning about the different cameras and all of that.
And was it film or was it digital at that point?
It was both. This was like 2007, 2008. So it was kind of right as the switchover was really just getting into full swing.
So you were learning both.
So we were learning both, and I was lucky enough to walk out a year later with a pretty decent reel.
Yeah.
And I had like 3 features lined up as a DP when I left film school.
What? Now hold on. Can we back up a second? Did anyone along the way discourage you at all because you were a woman being a cinematographer?
Not really. I was the only female DP in the program at the time, like in my class. But I definitely approached moving out here and getting into this as like, there is no plan B. I will not fail. This
is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I know there aren't a lot of women doing this, but I'm going to do it. And I was lucky enough, one of my cinematography teachers in film school was a female. And so that was really cool.
Yeah.
And then, all the guys in the program were great, and I didn't have a lot of pushback at that point.
Fantastic. So you got out, you had 3 lined up. Then what happened?
Right before we graduated was when the writer's strike happened.
Oh, great.
So it was a really great time to be graduating from film school. And I went off, like 2 weeks after graduation, I went off to the Republic of Georgia to film this movie.
Oh.
And there was like a small, like all the keys were coming from here, and then we were using it, and then the director and everyone else was from Tbilisi, Georgia.
Was this an independent feature?
Yes, yeah. Independent, self-funded. The director had gone to our film school and was like, I'm going to make an American feature in Georgia.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it seemed like a really cool opportunity at the time. I could do a whole podcast just on this experience.
Give us some tales from the trenches.
Yeah.
What happened?
I always say that this was like the best, worst first job anyone ever could have had. And it really kind of set the bar super low for me for what poor set conditions are. And so in a way it was great because then anything I came back and did here, it was like, we're fine, guys.
It's only going
Stop
up from here.
Yeah. I mean, the story ends with, and then Russia invaded.
Oh my God.
So it was just, you know, the safety standards were not the same.
Like, was there any money in it?
There wasn't a lot of money in it, but there was a lot of media and kind of national support and pride in it. And so he got a lot of really great deals and a lot of things for free and all of that. But it was, you know, there was also a little bit of like, trot the Americans out in front of the media and show them off, and then the media's on set and they're, you know, putting the news cameras down in front of my cameras so that they can shoot, and I'm like, excuse me, I'm shooting a movie here. And then just the whole system of the way that they were working was nothing like what we do here. So like, every night they would take all the gear back to the rental houses, and our crew was from the rental houses, and every day then they would bring the gear in the morning, and every day they brought me different cameras, different lenses, like different everything. So like on day one, maybe I had like a Canon with a Red Rock adapter for A cam and a Sony cam for B cam, like a Sony E&G cam for B cam, and then the next day I had like 2 Panasonics as A and B cam. And
how weird.
A totally different lens set. And I was like, how am I supposed to...
Did anything match?
No, like nothing matched. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced. So like
They
every
don't,
day...
like, check out the equipment for a week?
No. And my crew were the people from the people that worked at the rental houses.
Yeah. You'd think they would just grab the same camera tomorrow.
You would think.
How weird.
Also, nobody spoke English.
Helpful.
We were like, when I signed on to the job, it was like, we're gonna have a translator, it's gonna be great. No translators, nobody spoke English. So I like printed out pictures of all the like equipment, like scrims and all the different lights and all that, so, and like put them in a notebook so that I could flip pages and point to what I wanted and point to where we needed it.
Oh my God.
And then like sometimes I was like, it would just be faster for me to just do it.
Yeah.
But then because I was a woman, they wouldn't let me touch the equipment.
Right. Well, and it's not very efficient for you to be setting up your grip stands anyhow.
Yes and no, in a situation where it's going to take me 10 minutes to explain what I want.
True.
And then they may or may not still get it.
And then were the actors, they weren't speaking English either, I take it.
There was a mix. The script had been translated back and forth between English and Cartuli about 10 different times. It's a movie that will never see the light of day. Let's just put it that way. And then like the kicker on it all, as far as like set safety, was this was like a 15th century warrior, like kind of their own spin on 300 and this is something in Georgian history that is like a proud national story where there were these like 15 Templar knights who secretly like worked their way into the Turkish army, and then before the Turkish army invaded in the middle of the night, like killed everyone. So is
this an action film on top of?
Yeah, but their fighting style traditionally in Georgia involves a lot of throwing the weapons. And they don't like to rehearse, and at least at that time...
Was there a fight choreographer?
No, because, so, like, traditional warrior training is still fairly compulsory for them, starting at age, like, 5.
Oh, so they all know what they're doing.
So all of their actors know what they're doing, and they didn't think I needed to know what they were doing. And so I was, like, guessing where to put cameras, and, you know, I would try to talk to the director, and he would just go, don't worry, it will be very good. I don't know that it will be very good because I don't know what's happening.
I might get killed by a flying weapon.
My poor first AC almost got stabbed in the stomach with a sword because they threw it at her while she was pulling focus on the camera. And luckily, on a whim, I put a 2 or 3 inch thick beadboard bounce card in front of her below the lens of the camera right before the shot.
That was lucky.
And they threw the sword.
And they're using real
swords.
It.
Yes, all real.
Of course.
I mean, we would come out of takes and actors would have their faces slashed open because they got hit in the face with a sword.
This is crazy.
So we can't do that take again.
I hope it was good. Did you get some good shots?
The film never saw the light of day, so.
You haven't seen the dailies?
No. So the sword like went through the bounce card, and it was like an inch from her stomach where it stopped. Like it went through and like the bounce card is what stopped it from hitting her. And then another time I was camera operating and we do the take and the director cut and everyone starts freaking out. I'm looking around like what's going on? And they're like, look at your foot. And I look at my foot and like millimeters away there's a long spear jabbed into the ground that they had thrown and landed right next to my foot and like sticking into the ground.
I'm speechless, which is why I'm not responding.
No, it's okay. It's crazy. So stuff like that was happening all the time.
Okay, did you go home at night and have a laugh?
It was kind of so bizarre and overwhelming that I didn't know what to think of it at the time.
Yeah. But when it was over,
I was 22, and so like looking back on it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe.
Well, thank goodness you survived.
Yes, we survived, and I mean, I definitely had a few nights where I went home or went back to the hotel and just like cried because I was like, I can't believe we survived today.
This is a hard job.
It was a hard job. And
now, were you thinking this job is just hard or this movie is crazy?
Oh, it was definitely this movie is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many extreme circumstances on this film that you would never have here. I mean, the driving was another thing. Like, our executive producer, for whatever reason, found it offensive for anyone to wear a seatbelt. And if you wore a seatbelt, he would literally reach over and unclick it. And then he would drive like a madman. And everybody drove like crazy over there.
Offensive to wear a seatbelt?
Yes.
Because he's such a good driver. How dare you?
I think it has a lot to do with like all of the road rules and infrastructure and everything came from Russian occupation and communist occupation. And so they actively push against all that. Like street lights, road signs, driving on a certain side of the road is not important.
They're not having it.
No. So if traffic on our side was too slow, he would just pull into oncoming traffic and start honking and going. And we saw many other people doing this. And one day we were location scouting out in the country and on this like dirt road with like potholes and cows wandering around and like old grandmas walking down the road. And he got up to like 100 miles an hour. Like I watched the speedometer, got up to 100 miles an hour, set the cruise control. We were in like an SUV and he rolls down the window and he climbs outside the window and stands on the little like bar step and drives the car at 100 miles an hour from outside the car.
What is wrong with this guy?
I don't know. I literally every day was like, I'm going to die today.
Were you like sneaking your seatbelt on?
Oh, yes. Like when he did that, I was like, I don't care. Seatbelt on.
Okay, it's a miracle you didn't die on this shoot.
Yes. Like I said, I could do a whole podcast just on this shoot.
All right, let's move on.
And then Russia invaded. So every shoot.
And you were still there?
We got like one of the last flights out. Had no idea it was about to go down because nobody would tell us anything. Nobody would take us to the embassy to check in. We landed in France 5 hours later, and all over the TVs in the airport was, Russia's invading Georgia. It's like, oh.
Are you still friends with this guy?
Oh, no. No. So yeah, that was my first job out of film school.
That is crazy.
So every job after that, whenever we would be on set, and if conditions were like legitimately reasonable and people would be complaining, be like, look, at least Russia isn't invading.
Like, let me tell you a story.
Trump card. Like, and
you won every argument after that.
Yes.
Okay, what was your next job?
So while I was in Georgia, when the actors went into their de facto strike and everything else canceled.
Oh, great.
So I came back to no jobs and spent a couple months being like, what am I going to do?
But did you need all the time to recover from that job, honestly?
Yeah. But at the same time, it was also like,
you need to work.
I'm fresh out of film school. Like, I thought I had, this whole like plan and path and
you thought your year was set.
And I was like, I'm good. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm not good. And so then the next job that I was able to find, so that was in like May.
What year are we in now?
2008.
Oh yeah, so everything was shut down.
Yeah, everything was done.
Economy collapsed.
Yes. Yes, that was the other thing that happened when I graduated film school.
Perfect.
The economy also collapsed. So it was just like all around like the worst possible time to try to get into this business. So from May to October, I didn't have anything. And I like went back home and worked for my parents' business a little bit and was kind of coming back and forth and trying to, figure it out. And the next job I was able to find, I worked for free on a feature here as a camera PA.
Just to be on set.
Just to be on set and meet people and like do something.
Yeah.
And that was actually a really wonderful experience.
Do we know that movie?
It's called 5 Star Day.
Okay.
It stars Cam Gigande, or however you say his name, and Jenna Malone. And yeah, got hired on to work for free as a camera PA and worked really hard throughout the feature. And everyone on that film was so wonderful, and it was such a great experience.
You're like, this is what it should be like.
Okay. This is...
All is not lost.
Yes.
I have not ruined my life.
Yes. And everyone in the camera department was so sweet. Like, I was the only female, but they were all, throughout the film, like, wow, you are not just camera PA. Like, I was doing much more than that. And
because you can probably anticipate what they need.
yeah, and we were shooting on film, 35 millimeter, and we didn't have a loader. So the second AC ended up doing a lot of the loading, and I ended up doing a lot of the second AC work. And at the end of the feature, the whole camera department got together and got me a director's viewfinder. And it was a really sweet gift, and they totally didn't have to do that.
Nice.
Like, none of them were really making any money on it either. But they felt so bad that I had worked for free, and they were all super encouraging and like, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Like,
Good.
we haven't had any interns like you ever before, and just
So did
keep
that
working.
lead to something?
I've worked with a lot of those people, again, in various ways over the years, but it didn't necessarily lead directly into something else. I ended up teaching music for like a year and a half in private and charter schools because there was just nothing going on.
It seems like a pretty good backup, though.
Yeah.
Like, you're not bartending.
Right. I'm so grateful to have music as my backup.
Yeah.
And I mean, to this day, I'm lucky enough that I still get to teach some music lessons on the side as kind of a hobby.
Well, full disclosure, she's my kid's music teacher.
Yes. and I love getting to keep a toe in that world because I am a little bit creatively ADD. Like, I need to be working on a lot of different creative things. And so it's nice that that's my backup and I'm not, out trying to get a waitress job or something like that.
Yeah, because that keeps feeding your creative.
Absolutely. And it's really flexible. My students love me, and so they're willing to wait if I need to take some time off to go do something. And so that worked out really well for me. So yeah, after that, I started doing a lot of like music videos and commercial work and
As a DP?
As DP and industrials, DP, camera operator, a lot of that. And then a few years ago, in 2014, I was starting to get to a point where I was like, I love being a DP, but I want more creative control. And it was starting to get really hard on my body because it's a very physical job. There's a lot of heavy lifting involved. And I wasn't working on like super big budget stuff where other people were doing all of that.
Right.
Like, it was very much like all hands on deck.
You're schlepping the camera.
Yeah. And like, I was starting to have sciatica issues and all kinds of stuff. And it was like, I don't think I can do this super long term because it's just hard on the body.
You're not doing that job till you're 60.
Right, exactly. And then, I just kept coming back to this like creative control piece. And I went to this networking event with a friend of mine, and I feel like networking events for DPs are kind of useless and not super helpful.
Because they don't hire each other.
No. This networking event ended up being all writers. And like a few like really successful writers, and then a lot of like writers assistants and aspiring writers that are, doing other jobs while they're trying to get the writing going. And they were all talking about the Warner Brothers television writers workshop and what they were writing for their spec and getting it in for the deadline. And so this whole night I'm hearing all about it. The deadline is in 3 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And
you're like, that sounds interesting.
I left the event and I was like, that sounds really interesting.
Because I remember the beginning of the story you were writing.
Yes. And I've always been writing. Like, that's what I would do on my days off. That's what I would get up.
Writing scripts?
Not a lot of scripts at that point. Mostly, like, just
Stories.
stories, novels, novellas, whatever. I wrote a novella about corporate espionage when I was 12. Like, that was my first big writing piece.
As you do.
As one does.
So you went home and you're thinking about this Warner Brothers thing.
Yeah, and I had never written an episode of television before, like, at all. I had never read a television script before. I had been all in features and commercial and music video.
But you thought,
And I was like, why not?
I can do that.
Give it a try. I had like some downtime with work and just had this like gut instinct of like, I need to try this. So
Are you about to tell me you got in the Warner Brothers writing program?
I was the next one that would have gotten in.
Oh my God.
So, and you know, I had no expectations. I was like, these people have been working on this for like 6 months and have tried over and over and over again and never gotten anywhere with it. Like, they've been pursuing this for years. And so, but I'm just going to like take it as a fun exercise.
You have 3 whole weeks.
Right. So through a friend, I got 3 scripts from Scandal, because this was like the peak of the Scandal craze. This was season 3 of Scandal. So I got 3 scripts and like read them and analyzed them and came up with an idea, because you have to write a spec script of a current show. So I like bust out this whole Scandal script and submit it and forget about it and move on. It's like, that was a fun exercise. Back to life. And then a couple months later, I'd totally forgotten about it. And then I get this email as I'm leaving a lesson one day. And my best friend from high school was in town visiting. We were standing in line at a food truck. And I get this email from the Writers Workshop saying, congratulations, you're in the top 5%. We would love for you to submit if you're still interested, submit an original pilot by Wednesday at 5 p.m. This was Monday at 7 p.m.
Did you have a pilot in your pocket?
No. I had never written a pilot before. I'd never read a pilot before. Like, the only 3 episodes of television that I'd ever read were the 3 Scandal scripts that I read. Like, I had no ideas. I had nothing.
You're like, I can write a pilot script tomorrow.
And so I turned to my friend and I was like, I'm really sorry, but I think we have to cancel plans so I can write a pilot in the next 46 hours. And so we like get our food
And was your friend like, yeah, let's do this?
yeah, she was like,
that's
yeah,
a
no
good
problem.
friend.
Absolutely. And I was actually really grateful she was there. I canceled everything for the next 46 hours and I sat at my computer and I busted out an outline and then a rough draft.
Did you have a story idea already you were putting in this?
No.
Or you just started from nothing?
I started from nothing. And
this is ridiculous.
it is. It's so insane. And like my friend, God bless her, like she was like cooking me food and being like, have you gone to the bathroom recently? Because I was just like in it.
Oh, that is a sister.
Yeah. Oh, she was great. And then at one point she's like, I'm going to take a walk. And then I look up and I'm like, I thought you were going to take a walk. She's like, I was gone for 2 hours. I was like, when? And so I got the rough draft done at like 2 or 3 in the morning on the second night. And a couple of really good friends got up and read it and sent me notes in the middle of the night so that I could do another draft.
Those are really
before
good friends.
They're amazing friends. One of them is the friend that took me to the networking event in the first place. And when I was like, I think I should submit to this, she was like, I've been waiting for you to figure this out for years. And then the other
So she
one,
was all in.
Yeah. And then the other one is we've been working together for years and years, and he's actually one of my writing partners now. So they're very good friends. And yeah, so I submitted my pilot script at like 4:57 p.m. on Wednesday. And
Just under the wire.
Like just under the wire. Submit it and I was like, well, that's going nowhere. Forget about it, move on, go back to life. And then like a month later, I get a phone call. And they're like, hi, this is the Warner Brothers Television Writers Workshop. Are you still interested in the program? And I was like, yeah. They're like, we'd love for you to come in for an interview tomorrow. And what I learned from others at that point was, so they narrow it down from, you know, the 2,000 plus writers that submit to the top 5%. And then from the pilots, they narrow it down to like 2 or 3 writers per slot. And there's like, I think at the time there were 10 slots. And each slot, basically you get partnered with an executive that would be your mentor. And so you go interview with the head of the workshop and the executive you're partnered with, and they interview 2 or 3 people for that slot.
And did you tell them I wrote this overnight?
I didn't know at all what I was doing at this point.
Like, imagine if I had time and mentorship.
I wish I had said that. I didn't, because I was trying to like play it cool.
Like, be cool.
Yeah.
Like, I've been working on this for a long time.
Yeah. So I had never been in a meeting on a lot before or anything like that. And
It must have been so exciting, the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this is really cool, and like, there's no way I'm getting in, but like, I really want to get in,
And this will be a good story.
right? And so I go in and I do the interview, and it went okay. It was like, looking back on it now and how I've grown over the years, it's like, oh my gosh, I learned a lot.
You would have a whole different interview today, of course.
But I just did the best I could with what I knew at the time. And so I do the interview, and they're like, great, we'll let you know by the end of the week. End of the week, Friday comes, and I'm like pacing around my neighborhood waiting for a phone call. And like 5 p.m. on Friday, I finally get a call. And they're like, I'm so sorry to tell you this. If I could make another slot, I would. Like, it was super close, but ultimately we went with the other candidate. Please submit again in the future, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't get in.
But that was a pretty good run for your first try.
Yes. All things considered, like,
great.
It was a huge encouragement of like, okay,
yeah,
I should be doing this.
Yes, get on with it.
And so at that time, I said, okay, I'm not a DP anymore. I'm not going to take any more DP jobs.
Oh, you went all in.
I am a writer-producer. I want to be a showrunner. I want to work in television on, drama or comedy, and I went all in. So I stopped taking cinematography jobs and started teaching myself like everything I could about producing and writing, and just writing all the time. And I got the opportunity to produce a short film in Mexico later that year that ended up doing really, really well in the festival circuit, and was really encouraging to me of like, oh, I'm pretty good at producing too. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of went from there.
And now you're a showrunner on a show.
And now I'm a showrunner on a show.
Is this your first showrunner show?
Yes.
Okay, so how'd you get this job?
Actually from one of my former students.
I love it how that works out.
So most of my music students have ended up having connections to the industry in some way or another.
It is LA.
It is LA.
Every parent is in the business.
The odds are good. So I had a couple of students, a sibling pair, and their dad used to work for this company called Contend. It's a content company, great company, and they do a lot of branded content. Mm-hmm. And they ended up with, Microsoft is one of their big clients, and Microsoft owns Gears of War. Mm-hmm. And so through all that, they ended up with this docuseries, 30-minute episodes, 19 episodes. They got started and they did the first 4 episodes, and the previous showrunner got another opportunity that he needed to move on to, and so they were looking for someone, and they were having a hard time finding someone who's going to be the right fit for it. And so one day at a lesson, he's like, you produce, right? And he like used to shoot and edit. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, send me your stuff. And so I sent him, a few links to things, and the next day I got a phone call, and they're like, hey, we'd love for you to come in for an interview. And so I'm interviewing.
This is crazy, because you weren't like producing unscripted shows.
Well, I ended up in the interim, once I decided not to shoot anymore, I ended up doing a lot of corporate industrial videos where it was like one-man band, where I would like... Okay,
there's the missing link.
Yeah,
I wasn't seeing how this happened. Okay.
And then I also, over the years, have been doing a ton of video work for my parents' business.
Okay.
And doing a lot of like educational videos and that kind of stuff. So I would like shoot, edit, direct, produce.
So you had the reel that put it all together and made sense.
Right. Yes. So yeah, I ended up getting hired on for this job, and then that person ended up leaving the company like right as I was getting onto the job, but it's been really wonderful.
What about the gaming world? Like in the pro gaming elite people, are there any women in that crowd?
There's a few, not a lot. They're working on it. I think with a game like Gears of War, it's extremely violent. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't attract as many women as some of the other games. But like in Fortnite, we're seeing right now where a lot of women are coming up and having a lot of success. So it's...
Yeah, because girls are playing that as much as boys.
Yeah, so I think it varies from game to game and depends on the culture within the game. But there are women in Gears of War, and they have done fairly well in the past, and they're working on, being right in there with the guys.
Interesting. So what do you make of kind of this whole moment of women in the industry?
I think it's really fascinating because, there are so many great stories that still need to be told. And I think it's super exciting that we're in a time where, in a broader cultural sense, we're starting to recognize that, and that hopefully I'm going to get an opportunity to be part of that whole shift of momentum. And I think the more diverse we are in the people who are creating the stories and telling the stories, the more we're going to get the on-screen diversity naturally.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool to me to see so many women and people of color and all the various kinds of diversity we talk about starting to get more opportunities behind the camera. I mean, we still have a long way to go, but I love that it's at least a major conversation and becoming part of our cultural awareness.
Yeah, that feels like progress, just having the conversation.
Yeah.
And then the next step is, all right, put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
And hire the people.
You can't fix a problem you can't acknowledge.
Right.
So we're in step 1 right now. Which
Acknowledge the problem.
Yes. And, now that we're kind of, now that the problem is acknowledged, we can start actually making change, which is really exciting.
Now, are you still writing and
Yes.
looking to showrun on a narrative?
Yes, that is still the goal. So season 1 of my show wraps up in December. We're finishing up our last 2 episodes right now. So I'm right now starting to plan out, like, okay, what am I going to do with my hiatus?
In that time, you could write 5 seasons of something.
Right. Well, I have a lot of things written. Right now, I'm starting the process of getting some funding for a feature that my writing partners and I have written that's all about diversity and kind of pokes a little bit of fun at kind of the culture of false accusations that has been cropping up.
Because that's such a problem we need
Right.
to address.
Yes. So I directed a proof of concept for it about a month ago, and we're looking for investors right now.
Are you doing crowdfunding or private funding?
Looking for private funding. So I'm from Kansas City originally. We wrote the film for a specific location in Kansas City, and it is a comedy, and so there's several A-list comedy actors that are originally from Kansas City.
Oh, good.
So we're pursuing them, and we're trying to make it kind of like a homegrown native film. So I'm looking for investors mostly from Kansas City that are trying to help grow the film scene there.
Great.
Because they're working hard there to kind of establish themselves in the film world and try to get the incentives going and all of that to attract more.
Yeah, smart.
So
Does it have a title?
it's called Nightmare Mansion.
Nightmare Mansion.
Yes.
What advice do you have for young women starting out?
So I have 2 pieces of advice. And the first one doesn't actually have anything to do with your career.
Okay.
And
Life advice?
Yeah, life advice, like success in LA advice.
Oh, yeah. Bring it.
And that is, if you're just starting out here, it's just as important to find your people as it is to find work. I love LA, but it can be a rough place if you don't have your people. And so
How do you find your people?
you figure out what you're interested in and go do that outside of your career. Like for me, I found people at church and in softball leagues and in music, like whatever your other interests are, like go do that, jump in, be a part, and start finding your people, because without a tribe, LA can be pretty rough.
Yeah. And those people, no matter what they're doing, probably work in the business
Right,
also.
exactly. It's a great way to get those contacts for the business, but also having people outside of the business is kind of nice.
Yeah. Genuine friendships.
Yes, and so much of life in this business is about this business, and so every now and then it's nice to go to coffee with a friend and talk about something not business related.
Something else.
Yes, and so find your people. That is super key. I have seen so many people, you know, they say that like less than 2% of the people that move out here every year for film and television make it 2 years.
Seriously?
Yeah. That was the statistic when I was moving out here.
Oh my gosh.
And so like being a freelancer and getting established is really hard, but having people makes it so much easier to push through those hard times. So do that. And then my second piece of advice is learn a technical skill. You know, you can throw a rock and hit a writer or a director or producer in this town.
Or an actor, don't forget that.
Oh yeah, and actors. And that's great. And I love people pursuing their passions. But if you want to work and make money right away without being, you know, a waiter or a bartender or something like that, having a technical skill will get you hired so much faster. And that was one of the greatest pieces of advice that I learned in film school. We could choose majors between writing, directing, producing, editing, cinematography, production design, and sound mixing. And they were like, we can't teach, you know, you can't learn to be a writer or a producer in a year. But you can learn how to be an assistant editor.
Right. A skill that will get you a job.
Yes. You can learn those skilled positions.
And that gets you on set. That introduces you to people.
Yep, exactly.
And it pays your rent.
Exactly.
Important.
And if you want to be a writer or an actor or a director or a producer, like the more you know about how it works on set or how it works in post, the more value you're going to bring as a writer, producer, actor, whatever. Like
Smart.
those are really important things to know. And so you're doing yourself a favor in multiple ways.
Now, did you ever think about like doing post sound or music supervising or composing or anything like that?
You know, it's funny. I tell my team this on the show all the time. Picking music for our episodes is like my kryptonite. I hate picking music for any sort of visual piece.
Why?
For as much as I love music and as much as I love film and television, like the two, when I get them together, my brain just like melts and I can't do it.
That's so funny. You need to keep them separate.
Yeah, like I'll pick music and like put it in and send it to someone and they'll be like, what is this music? I'm like, I thought it was good. And they're like, no. I was like, okay. I need someone else to pick the music.
I have to tell you a story. I am also kind of a musician. I was a classically trained pianist.
Oh, okay.
So, and I was producing commercials and editing commercials at one point. And so I was editing this commercial. I had a composer compose this piece of music from sounds at an iron art and furniture factory. So the piece was all like explosions and percussion and so he created this piece. So then I'm editing against this piece and I kept doing the edits like on the offbeat, which I thought was really cool. And then the director would come in and be like, that makes absolutely no sense. Like the edit should be on the downbeat. I'm like, no, you don't get it. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world and no one else understood what I was doing. I was like, okay, I should be doing that.
Yes. So like my editor knows. One of the nice things about doing a show like this is like they handed me the branding guidelines as far as like what kind of music to use and all of that. And so that was super helpful because otherwise I would have been off on another planet.
Yeah.
But I'll go through and,
so funny.
And I'll pick like 40 different tracks and be like, use any of these in this episode.
Yeah.
Go. And then he like works magic with it. I'm always impressed when he's able to put together.
That's so funny. I totally get that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been wonderful.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Megan Woeppel for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms, and also go subscribe to Exit 38 and The Kiss My Age Show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.